All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first IEEE-USA Washington update of 2024. As always, I am Eric Heilman, the Director of Government Relations here in Washington, D.C. Lot going on, lots to catch up on, so let's jump right into it. Let's start by looking back a couple of weeks ago, the very end of 2023, just to sort of remind everybody where we left off in Congress with some big year-end must-do items that Congress needed to pass or act on or address before the calendar year turned over. They actually did pretty good, faced with a lot of deadlines. The big one, obviously, is the federal spending situation and whether or not the government was going to be funded, shut down. We're going to talk about this a little bit later here in the presentation, but they were able to punt on some of those spending decisions and continue the federal government funding levels going in two separate tranches. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. They passed an extension short term, but it's still an extension of the FAA reauthorization bill, which is of interest to IEEE-USA and some of our members. Similarly, with an intelligence related bill, they punted on that, pushed it to April until they needed to do a full reauthorization. And the other big one, which is of great interest to us, was the National Defense Authorizations Bill. They did pass the annual full bill on that one, so they got that out of the way. What they didn't do was act on some additional funding that the president had requested for a number of incidents, actions, issues going on around the world, all of the big headline news ones that you read about. So that's where they left 2023. So now we head into 2024, and I wanted to put this up there just to kind of show you what folks here in Washington, D.C. are expecting in this new year. This is based off of a survey that a local Inside the Beltway publication does on a number of topics sort of throughout the year. The specific audience that they target in asking these questions are K Street professional lobbyists, senior level staffers on Capitol Hill, people who generally work here in Washington on policy, work with Congress, lobby Congress, and are kind of considered in the know in some way, shape, or form. So these are some of the top questions that they asked or topics that they addressed in terms of what's going to happen in 2024, both on a policy from a policy perspective as well as a political perspective. Obviously, this is an election year. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. There are still conversations within the Republicans in the House, in particular, about impeaching President Biden. That does not poll very well in terms of whether it will help Republican efforts in the next election. Most did believe that Ukraine funding would happen this year, and I tend to agree with that. I think that will have to be paired with legislation on southern border funding and security, which is the other item down there. I think those two will move in conjunction together early this year. And then over on the presidential side, on the Republicans, Governor Nikki Haley seems to be doing well in the primary to become the Republican nominee, and significantly most think that she poses the greatest threat to the clear front runner right now on the Republican side in Donald Trump. So these are just a few of the high level things that folks inside the Beltway here are looking to in 2024. But let's get back into the congressional agenda and the types of things that Congress in particular and the administration as well are focused on and actively working on right now. Government funding. I feel like this is a lather, rinse, repeat sort of conversation. We've been talking about this for months. Everybody here has been talking about this for months. It feels like it's Groundhog Day every couple of weeks, every other month on this, and that is no exception again right now. The border crisis continues to be something that Republicans in particular really want attention on, funding for, additional resources on, and there is a lot of traction there. I've spoken about this in the past. There are a lot of Democrats who are similarly aligned. And again, I think you might see some action on that if paired with some of the president's requests on aid for Ukraine, which is very popular among Senate Republicans, as well as the Israel-Gaza situation. And then I know it's only a few days into 2024, but this is now an election year. It's formal, it's official, and it's going to be a big one. So these are sort of the top issues that are on the minds and on the calendars and on schedules for the types of members of Congress and policymakers that are working here right now. So let's flip back over to funding and whether or not a shutdown can be averted. I feel like I've put up versions of this slide multiple times in the last few months because this really is the kicking the can down the road saga. September 31st, 2023 was the end of fiscal year 23, and then officially, technically, the next day began fiscal year 2024, but nothing has happened on that particular budget. So they continue to utilize 2023 spending authorities and spending levels and just keep the government funded at those levels until they can finally agree on a 2024 budget. So we blew through September 31st. They blew through the other date that they moved everything to, November 17th. And we are now in a situation where we have two different pieces of legislation that were passed to keep the government funded. And it's sort of divvied up the different agencies in these two different bills. There's a lot of strategic and political reasons for this that I won't go into. But the first date coming up is very soon, the 19th. Among the agencies that bill funds and which will expire by the 19th if they don't act are the Department of Energy and Department of Transportation. VA is in there as well. There are a couple of others. And then the next one is a little bit more significant for IEEE-USA and our members and the industries that our constituents and our members work in, and DoD, NSF, NIST. A lot of the scientific ones are in there. The science-related R&D ones are in there. So what's going to happen here? Well, right now, heated negotiations continue. A few days ago, you may have seen, if you follow any of this, there was a deal reached on the top line level spending, a deal between the White House, Senate Democrats who have the majority there, and then House Republicans who have the majority there. That deal is already under question and being challenged by a lot of the right-wing conservative members of the House who were the same ones that challenged things and ended up taking down Speaker McCarthy. And are making a lot of noise again. Ironically, when McCarthy left, a lot of those right-wing members pushed Speaker Johnson Mike Johnson to be Speaker in order to kind of, in their minds, fix a lot of this. He did become Speaker, and yet he just agreed to the same types of things that McCarthy did, and now is facing some of the same problems from those same members of Congress. So we really are in Groundhog Day on this one. Possible outcomes, I seriously doubt that there's going to be a partial shutdown on the 19th or the 2nd right now. I do think another continuing resolution is on the table and will happen. And the question now is, what's the next date? So are they going to move the goalposts to mid-February, late February, or even into March? Some are talking about March. There's still a lot that needs to be worked out in terms of the specific budget line items within each agency. Obviously, this should have been done months ago, but it hasn't. So conversations continue on that. They could do something just on each piece of it. There are some members of Congress who are willing to let the 19th come and go and have a shutdown of the agencies within that bill to kind of force a little bit more priority. I don't think that's going to happen. And then I don't think that there's going to be a full shutdown. I do see another continuing resolution coming, and I hope by the time we talk again next year, that will have happened already. But as I alluded to, House Republicans in the more conservative wing of the party are already arguing, screaming, pushing back. Chip Roy is one of those members of Congress from Texas. And this was his tweet reply or X reply to Republican leader Mitch McConnell in the Senate, lauding the agreement that supposedly would be the building blocks on which they could come to an agreement. I think his sentiments here are well understood. And so this is what we're dealing with and what we're facing. Regardless, and as I always like to kind of pivot from what's going on in the big picture and what's going on politically, we at IEEE-USA still have our policy priorities. We continue to work on those. We continue to prioritize the things that our members and that our policy committee members want us to prioritize. Among those is the CHIPS and Science Act. This is obviously something you have all heard us talk about, and you're going to hear us talking about it. We are very bullish on this law. We think there's a lot of potential for our members and for a pretty important technology and a supply chain that really will benefit a lot of parts of the country. And you're going to hear us talking about the CHIPS and Science Act a lot more this year. We've got programs in the works. We've got events and conferences that we are talking about. We're going to be doing a lot of advocacy around it. And this is just sort of the first initial piece of that. IEEE-USA is a member of an organization called Task Force on American Innovation. It is essentially what it sounds like. It's an organization made up of technical societies like IEEE-USA, as well as private industry, think tanks, research organizations, universities, that sort of thing. Largely focused on prioritizing research and development spending, technology-related legislation and programming. And the task force sent up a letter to the administration urging full funding for the CHIPS and Science Act programs within the federal government when it puts together its FY25 budget. We're still, if you're keeping score here, we're still operating under FY23 budget authority. The deal that is trying to be worked out is for FY24, which has already started technically, but FY25 is coming. And the way the cycle works, the White House and the administration are currently preparing that budget submission that will go to Congress. And as part of that initial process, we want to make sure we get really good numbers and really robust funding levels for these programs in that budget. And as it moves along, our advocacy will continue and we will keep doing our work on that. So this is just one little thing that we did recently that we're going to keep building on. I'm going to transition now to one of my favorite topics, only because I've talked about it a lot, and I really think there's going to be a lot of action on this year, as I have said, and that's artificial intelligence. Going back to that sort of inside the Beltway survey that takes place regularly, they did a year-end report on a number of topics, a number of issues, and one of those was AI. And essentially the question was, do you think it's important to pass legislation, and notice that the wording here is to mitigate the risks of AI, not highlight the benefits, which is another thing that we're going to talk about. And do you believe it will pass? Overwhelmingly, Republicans and Democrats, no matter who you surveyed, thought that it was important. But at the middle of the year, last year, in July 2023, you see that only 21% actually thought it was going to pass. And by the time we got to the end of the year, almost 8% thought it was going to pass. That doesn't look good, but if you juxtapose that with the numbers that show people think it's important, I think you still have an opportunity for some regained momentum here. And that's what this slide is intended to share. I pulled this from sort of a publication of lawyers that also does some reporting on lobbying in terms of the lobbying industry itself here in Washington. And they interviewed 4 particular they call them lobbying leaders to just ask what they thought about for 2024, an open-ended question. And 3 of them mentioned AI as something that was going to be an issue this year. And in fact, one of them down at the bottom there said that her firm is actually going to be looking to hire and staff up individuals who have expertise in AI policy. So the hired guns on K Street and in the big law firms and the big lobbying shops are gearing up to make AI a big priority and are thinking that it's going to be a top issue for Congress. And that is certainly helpful for what we do, because our members, you all know this is in our wheelhouse in a major way. And IEEE-USA is going to be doing a lot on artificial intelligence legislation this year. We've already built a very good foundation in the last year and a half. We have a seat at the table with the key policymakers who have been writing legislation. Our AI policy committee is extremely active, very engaged, very knowledgeable, regularly speaks with Capitol Hill, and I expect that to continue going into this year. I'm looking forward to an event or two around this that we will host and sponsor. We'll get word out on that as it's put together. And we're in the final touches here of finalizing an updated policy position statement from our AI policy committee on governance of artificial intelligence. So we are in a great position to spend a lot of time on this and to do our best to highlight the benefits that this technology has, while also talking about the ways to mitigate risks that also ensure individual rights, entrepreneurship and innovation, research and development, and really moving forward in the right way. So watch this space, lots more to come on AI. And there's also a reason for that. And I think I touched on this a few months ago as well. We're not the only ones holding an election this year. There's this interesting storm where a number of the biggest countries around the world are all having elections this same year. That's kind of a rarity. And this represents a great opportunity, but I think for a lot of people, a great threat. We are obviously in a world now where AI is much more available, much cheaper, and generative AI can be used to manipulate people pretty easily. And when it comes to elections, a lot of folks are very scared that that is a very easy target, particularly in the next few months. And as in the US, we gear up towards November in our elections. There's a lot of work that's being done to kind of study and warn about this. This is just one that I threw up there for folks to kind of be aware of. But I think it just all speaks to the notion and the fact that AI and democracy and elections and voting and just sort of general societal issues is only going to increase in conversation. And frankly, I think we're going to do everything we can to talk about the benefits and not just the risks that sort of play into a lot of fears on there out there on this. So if you want to participate, if you have an interest, if you have a particular angle or stake or question, we invite you to speak up, to join our committee, to submit whatever you want. We need as many voices on this as we can, because we think we have a great story to tell and a great opportunity to mold what is clearly going to be a game-changing technology in our society for the next decades. Let me move now to just some events, some things that we did and some things that we are doing. If you were at the annual IEEE Young Professionals Rising Stars Conference in Vegas this last week, I hope you had as good a time as we did. As always, we were a host, a sponsor, and we had a booth and we participated, and it was a great time. Our managing director, Russ Harrison, gave a talk on the CHIPS and Science Act and kind of went into a little bit deeper than just a 101 of what is this bill, what's in it, how does it work, and he really tried to speak to the young professionals in the audience, a lot of them college students or recent graduates, to kind of explain what does this mean for you in your future, in your career. Like I said, we believe that there are a lot of wonderful programs that came out of that bill and that federal agencies are working to implement and to spend money on. And we think there's a lot of great things that particularly our YP members can take advantage of. So great event, great opportunity to be there, meet everybody, and start getting excited about a lot of the things we're looking at for 2024. CVD coming soon. We have announced the date on this already, and I can confirm that early next week, I'm aiming for Tuesday, we will open up registration for our Congressional Visits Day. April 10th and 11th, we invite all IEEE members, whether you are a brand new young professional in a student or a student in somewhere, or a life member retired for several years. If you're able to come to Washington, D.C., we will train you. We will organize everyone into groups, and we will send you to Capitol Hill to talk to your members of Congress about issues that IEEE USA works on, cares about, and that you know and understand. And it's a really great experience to kind of get your feet wet a little bit in shoe leather lobbying, learn a little bit more about how Congress works, and frankly, see that you really can make a difference and play a role, and you have a stake. So look for this space. Look in your email accounts. We really want a great level of participation on this this year, and particularly this year. Everything I've just talked about, and I think a lot of other things that will unfold over the next few months, make this a very important year for IEEE USA and the industries that you all work in and are researching and teaching and involved in. And then the cruise. I've mentioned the cruise, but we're going to keep plugging the cruise. There's a lot of great interest in this next one. A seven-night cruise to Alaska, leaving out of Seattle in September. Please join us. It was a great time when everybody went the first time around, and we really are looking to up our game on this one and have some great programming, some great networking opportunity, obviously some great sightseeing. So please consider joining us for this in September. Registration for this is open, so please visit our website. That's all I have. That was pretty quick. I went through everything in about 20 minutes. As always, I am more than happy to take questions, and I'm going to start looking at the comments section here to see if we've got anything. If you can't think of anything now, obviously you've got all the QR codes and email contact and phone information you need, so feel free to reach out anytime. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Brendan, thanks as always. Your support has been tremendous. Thank you for that comment. Anything else from anybody? All right. Well, I will give you the rest of the time back, and I hope everyone has a good rest of the week, and we will see you in a month. Take care.
I've always been a very hands-on person, and I like the beauty of a machine that is well put together. I'm excited to work here because we are building a state-of-the-art particle accelerator in order to make medical radioisotopes more available for cancer treatments. I want to build something that matters, and this is something that matters. Being a member of IEEE, there's a whole community of people who are interested in what you're interested in. IEEE USA is my competitive edge.